Destination Medicine is a joint project of the regional training hubs. This podcast series brings you medical students' accounts of their experiences in applying to study medicine.
Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Nicole Goodman. Rafael Szumer was working in northern WA as a lawyer when he received his calling to medicine. Largely representing Indigenous clients, he says he became frustrated that their poor health issues often impacted negatively on their cases. Rafa wanted to help the community more directly and realised he could do that through medicine. So with a sceptical family standing by, he gave up what he calls a well-paid and interesting job to return to student life and embark on a medical degree. He calls the change a huge shock, more of a shock than he expected, but is now very happy he made the change. As you'll hear, he's maintaining his links to the Aboriginal community while undertaking a 2-year placement in regional New South Wales. It's a position and a place he's extremely pleased to be in because of the camaraderie, the wide range of professional experiences, and his proximity to his teachers. He starts by explaining to Jeff Waters why it was that this bush lawyer decided to become a doctor and what the transformation was like.
The sort of law I was practicing was working a lot in communities that were doing it pretty tough. So I spent the last couple of years as a lawyer up in the Kimberley, working a lot in remote Aboriginal communities, and sort of was doing a lot of work with people who also had a lot of health issues, whether they themselves or their family members. And a lot of times it was pretty hard to work through the legal issues that they were having, whether that was sort of keeping a tenancy or trying to ensure that kids weren't removed when people also had a lot of health challenges. And so I guess I just became more and more interested in trying to address some of those health issues, still wanting to work with the same sort of communities, but just from a health rather than a legal perspective.
It's a big departure though, isn't it?
Yeah, was a bit of a shock to the system, that's for sure. So I think the ego definitely took a bit of a hit going from feeling somewhat competent to back to the beginning. But it's certainly gotten easier over time. But yeah, it was a bit of a shock to the system at first.
So when you told your family and friends that you were going to move from the law into medicine, what was their reaction?
I think they probably thought I was a bit mad to begin with. Already had a number of years of study, obviously, and years of work. I mean, they were supportive, but definitely there was a bit of probably reality checking to make sure I knew what I was in for. But, everyone sort of thought, well, look, if that's something you really want to do, then that sounds great. But yeah, obviously not the most common pathway to becoming a doctor, I guess.
No, indeed. Any regrets about the move at all?
No real regrets. It was probably a little more challenging than I would have imagined to begin with. Everything from simple materialistic factors like going from earning an income and sort of having a bit of more control over what I did with my days, weeks and years to, like I said, that shock to the system of going from being someone who was teaching junior lawyers or law students and appearing in court every week and doing a lot of work on the road to sort of sitting in a classroom or a lecture theatre, which had been probably quite a few years since I'd done that. So yeah, I think that was probably more of the challenge, just letting go of feeling like I had to be competent and being okay with starting out a bit from scratch again.
And you had to move from Kununurra to study?
Yeah. So at the moment, same as all over Australia, essentially you generally have to move to at least a largish regional town, if not a city, for medicine. I moved to Sydney because of some family reasons, had 2 years in Sydney and then was lucky enough to come out to Orange for sort of my last 2 years of medicine, which was definitely something I've really enjoyed.
Well, we'll get back to that in a minute, but please tell me what the process was like in applying for medicine.
A little bit confusing, mostly because all the different universities have slightly different criteria. So working out which ones I might have been eligible for or which ones there was sort of a direct pathway through to in Australia, I guess, as people are aware, you can do either undergraduate or postgraduate medicine, and I was definitely more keen to do postgraduate just to try and save a bit of time. But that still meant a bit of figuring out the application process for all the different universities. So I guess that was the main thing. And then obviously there's various tests that I needed to do and do reasonably okay on as part of that process as well.
Well, now you're on the track. Is it what you thought it would be like? Is it meeting your expectations?
Yeah, definitely, especially the final 2 years, which for me, I guess I've been much more clinically orientated. So sort of being in the hospital 4 days a week or the GP practice, that's been much closer to sort of what I imagined studying medicine to be. The first 2 years I was in a hospital, but generally like 1 day a week, with the other time sort of more academic or theoretical study. And that was definitely a bit harder to grapple with. I'm someone who learns by doing and seeing more so probably than sitting down and reading something or studying something.
You said that you were very interested in social justice when you were up in the Kimberley working as a lawyer. Do you still do volunteer work in that regard?
Yeah, so I guess one way I've tried to keep my hand in with sort of my old self. So I volunteer as a director of a health charity that works across East and West Kimberley, delivering allied health and mental health and chronic care services to predominantly Aboriginal communities, but not exclusively. And I've also spent a bit of time over the last year volunteering as an independent director for the Burke Aboriginal Health Service, working with some of the local directors to get the organisation, I guess, back on track after a few bumps in the road. So that, again, was something that I really enjoyed doing.
Of course, Western New South Wales has a huge Indigenous population.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess when people think of where, Aboriginal people live, everyone's minds often goes to sort of the Northern Territory or North Queensland or WA, but, whether it's, obviously huge community in Sydney and Redfern and Western Sydney and then Western New South Wales as well. Burke, Dubbo, Wellington, Ingham, you name the town, there's really large Aboriginal communities who I don't think you can apply a one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare in any of those communities. It's different communities with different needs and different approaches.
Now, you're studying at the School of Rural Health in Orange. Can you tell me why you chose to do 2 years there?
The main reason was really, firstly, I guess for the aspect of someone who enjoys living and working in smaller places. I like a lot about cities, but definitely see myself working rurally long term. And I was also really keen to go somewhere where you could, I guess, maybe get your hands dirtier a little quicker. So working in a smaller hospital, you get to know the registrars, the consultants, the nurses, everyone much quicker on a first name basis. People know who you are, and if you're keen and dedicated, you're certainly able to get really involved, whether that's on a medical term or a surgical term or GP terms in the community. And that's something that, like I said, I really valued, having that chance to sort of learn by doing. And I think whether it's Orange or any other regional town, I'd certainly think that's a great opportunity for medical students.
Now, you said you wanted to get your hands dirty quicker, an interesting turn of phrase for a potential doctor. What did you mean by that? Does that mean that you're getting more on-the-job experience?
Oh, look, I guess everyone's experience is different, but certainly I've found in chatting to other friends, I think if you're in a rural location, you probably get a lot great opportunity to do like clinical procedures earlier on and more opportunity. You're not fighting with another 100 medical students and junior doctors. And like I said, I think it's really about also building those relationships. You've got the opportunity to have those relationships with the doctors and other healthcare practitioners in the hospital, which means if something's happening, people will invite you to come and take part or to be part of it. So I think that's probably what I was getting at.
Did you know anyone in Orange before you moved there?
No, I've lived all over Australia. I've lived in Tassie and WA, Queensland, NT for a bit. But no, Orange was one of the places that I was a bit of a blank spot on the map for me.
So how do you find it socially?
Look, I've had a great time in Orange. So made quite a few friends here. Often people come out from Sydney or elsewhere for a long weekend or something, which is nice to have a few visitors. I guess if you're into being whether it's, outdoors, half the hospital seems to attend parkrun on a Saturday morning and then go for a coffee or a croissant, which is lovely. Yeah, I've started playing some social netball, which I can't say is I'm performing particularly well, but yeah, something nice to do to break up the week.
What would you say to other medical students considering an extended rural clinical placement?
Oh, look, I'd say jump at the opportunity. I think both from a social perspective, especially if you're someone who's never lived outside a big city before, I think just getting an understanding and insight into how the rest of the country lives and what healthcare opportunities and challenges they face. And also just from your own development from a skills perspective, I think it's certainly an invaluable opportunity.
So you get to see more interesting cases more often than you would in the city?
Look, I think just given that there's a lower ratio of students to doctors, and particularly some of the senior doctors you work with, yeah, you definitely get the opportunity for greater exposure. And I think I've certainly found that you really feel part of the team, even as a student. You're, whether it's doing cannulas or bloods or reviewing patients or just being present on ward rounds, I think I've certainly found that I felt much more part of the team at a rural hospital than I have in the city.
So, Raf, what is one piece of advice you wish you were given before you started your medical journey?
Oh, look, I think being told that it's possible and that, medicine is a place that you can come to whatever your background. I think like any profession or trade, the greater diversity of people studying medicine, the better both for the profession and for the community. So whether you're a farmer, an architect, an army officer, a lawyer, a nurse, whoever, I think medicine's better for having that diversity. And I'd certainly say to myself, and certainly to anyone else, I think go for it, really. It can be a bit of a challenging, bumpy road, but I think it's definitely worth it.
That was Rafael Szumer, financial medical student on a 2-year placement at Orange Health Service. We trust you've enjoyed this episode of Destination Medicine, a joint project of the regional training hubs. The hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.